Hey, what's up? It's RickOnTheRocks.com and Dad, and this is our fantasy football extravaganza draft show, which we've been promoting quite a bit lately. Uncle Tom says I need to get closer so you can see my hands. I don't think anyone wants to. People are going to have seizures. So we're coming to you live from Rick on the Rock Central in South Florida. I've got Dad with me. And just a little background again, Dad and I have been running fantasy football teams together for almost 5 years. And we've ended up in the playoffs or the championship game every year that we've been doing it. So we decided that we were just going to talk about it and tell people how we do what we do. And so here we are. And Dad, what would you like to say real quick?
Well, it's supposed to be a fun experience. So some people are real serious about it, like I am. Others want to draft as many of their favorite team's players as they possibly can. For instance, say if you're a Bears fan like I am, you try to get as many Bears as you can, although Lord knows why you would want to do that. But you understand what I'm saying, and just have a good time with it. I try to get in leagues that are competitive. Just because it's more fun for me that way. But there's all different. I mean, casual.
I once had a guy in my first year playing fantasy football, and we worked at the same restaurant. I was the head bartender, and he threw his phone at me. He didn't work there after that, but that's how intense people get. Dad and I are trying to do this. Like, we enjoy it. It's a lot of fun for us. So we've got some notes. We've been researching.
All right, let me start first with, we've had a couple of preview shows to just test this thing out, see how it worked. And I think both preview shows, I mentioned the fact that there's a cut down date.
Yeah.
All of the teams are carrying their 90 players through their fourth playoff game. Coming up, probably starting tomorrow. I didn't look at the schedule, but this weekend is the third week of the exhibition season, not the playoffs. Exhibition season.
Preseason.
Preseason. That's what it is. And the starting players on most teams are going to play for as much as 3 quarters often. Then the following week, all of the games are on Thursday. A week from tomorrow, all of the games are on Thursday. That'll be the fourth and final preseason game.
And no starters will be playing.
Hardly any. There may be a few exceptions, but then by Saturday, September 2nd at 4 p.m., every team has to cut down from 90 players to 53 players, all in one big swoopo. So
he said swoopo.
Swoopo, yeah, one big swoopo. So a couple days after, that's what the final play, the final preseason game is August 31st, which is a Thursday. On Saturday by 4 o'clock, they have to cut. And so there's going to be a lot of players looking for jobs. The one thing that can happen, it may happen to all of us to some degree, is we may have players on our team that get cut and don't have a team to play on.
Well, I actually read today, and we've been doing research about this for the last few weeks. There's a couple of players that everyone, and Odell Beckham Jr. was one of them, that there are players getting hurt already that people have picked up in a fantasy league, and they're kind of like, oh no, why did I do that? Like, they kind of jumped the gun on it. So that's what we're here to help you figure out and tell you a little bit about what we do.
Yeah, and there's several of those players floating around. Andrew Luck, for instance, the quarterback of Indianapolis Colts, still hasn't played in a preseason game, and nobody's certain and nobody's saying whether he's even going to be ready to start the season.
Didn't you get stuck with him on one of your teams?
Yes, I did. And
Dad goes in and does the teams, and all of a sudden they just draft him for him. He's like, oh, God, I've got like 6 teams.
Yeah, so.
He was like, Andrew Luck, no.
Le'Veon Bell has been holding out, although he has notified the team that he is going to be He'll be in camp ready to go on September 1st and ready to play in the first regular season game. I also have Le'Veon Bell on one of my teams, but when you have as many teams, right now I've got 4 teams, so I have quite a few different players. But there's a lot of players that are questionable. You just don't know. There's also, you're going to have injuries all through the year, and that's just all part of doing this. And so you just have to go from there. The regular season, the first game of the regular season is on Thursday, September 7th.
And who's playing?
Let me see, that's at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we have Kansas City at New England.
Pretty good game. Not a
on
bad
NBC.
game.
Then the rest of the teams will play on Sunday, September 10th, except there are 2 games on Monday, September 11th. The early game, 7 o'clock, is New Orleans at Minnesota. Then the 10:20 game is the L.A. Chargers.
San Diego. I'm not going
to no longer San Diego. Will be playing at Denver, and that'll be the first week schedule. So that's what we're pointing to, and hopefully just have fun with it if you haven't drafted yet and are going to be doing it or interested in doing it. I suggest you just jump in. ESPN pretty much shows you how to do it, leads you right along. You almost can't go wrong. I mean, there's no wrong way to do this anyway. So.
Well, and today when I was going through some of my notes that we had for the show, and Dad and I are big note guys, and we write stuff down. It's not in the phone, it's not on the iPad, it's not on the computer. We write stuff down because if I write it down, I'm going to remember it. One of the biggest things, and I have it in bold right here, and I don't know if you can see it. Don't bet your team. Don't think that your favorite team has the best players, period, when you're playing fantasy football. I made that mistake the first year that I played. I took a bunch of Bears guys, and I was just done by like the 5th or 6th week. Done. Then I figured out, well, what happens if I've got to root for Aaron Rodgers? I picked up Rodgers, and I've got to root for him against the Bears. If you want to win, you kind of got to let it happen, which is hard for a lot of people. And we talked about that. We were like, oh.
Yeah, I play 3 different sports fantasy, and that's all.
Jordy Nelson is going to kill us today, you know.
But you just have to realize that that's part of doing this. So, and it happens. So what?
Yeah, and it's having fun. If your team wins, your team wins.
It's a game. I mean,
yeah.
If you have Aaron Rodgers, if you have Brady, it doesn't matter who you have. You just let it go and have a good time. I do have a couple of Bears players, I guess, on a couple of my teams.
There's 3.
Jordan Howard.
There's about 3.
Cameron Meredith. I have both of them on various teams.
That they're encouraging people to pick up.
And so there's a couple you can get if you're a Bear fan. So
well, when I was going through my research, and I thought it would be interesting, and if you see I've got all my highlights and my pin marks. There are 6 teams that they're saying if you're going to do a draft, these 6 teams are who you need to get your guys from.
Who are they, Rick? Who's this they?
I actually researched 3 different fantasy sites that I didn't have to pay for because I'm not going to pay for them, and that's just me.
2 good sites are ESPN and NFL.com.
NFL.com. Those are the 2 that I go on.
Go on NFL.com. Up the top, they have a fantasy link, and they have some very good people who are led by Michael Fabiano.
So the number 1 team, if you're drafting in the next few weeks, the number 1 team to look at, Green Bay. Makes sense. I was okay with that. Tied with Green Bay is New Orleans. I wasn't quite sure about that. I looked at some of their players. I'm like, really? I'll let that one fly.
All right, Rick, but wait a minute. Wait just a minute.
Well, what?
You're thinking in terms of winning and losing games. In fantasy, you're looking at for teams because there's only one defensive category, and that is defense. All the rest is offense. So you want nothing but high-scoring teams or high-scoring players off of high-scoring teams. That's why you want players off of Green Bay, New Orleans, Atlanta, probably Oakland,
Oddly
Seattle.
enough, Atlanta wasn't here. I thought Atlanta would be there.
They're down.
But yeah, New Orleans will have like 400 or 500 yards, offensive yards.
Yeah, they may not win the games. Yeah, that's exactly
They'll
why.
lose like 45 to 42 or something.
Yeah, in fantasy baseball, for instance, there are 5 pitching categories and 5 hitting categories, so it's split up. In fantasy football, they're not split up at all. You have each team has a defense. Each fantasy team picks a defense. So you may have the Pittsburgh Steelers defense this week, and you accumulate points. All the rest of the categories are offensive categories, led by the quarterback is usually the highest scoring player, although wide receivers and running backs who are also good receivers, such as Devontae Freeman from Atlanta, are excellent at something like that, where you run up a lot of points. So some tight ends, Gronkowski, for instance, are the same as having a wide receiver, a top-notch wide receiver. So
I've got number 3, or actually there's like a 5-way or 4-way tie for number 2. Seattle.
You mentioned them.
6 players. 6 players you need to look at. New England. 6 players.
Always New England. The problem with New England is that Bill Belichick, their coach, uses a lot of players. So you can't depend on who, just because Dion Lewis was their top featured running back last week doesn't mean that Dion Lewis is going to be their featured.
Belichick will have a wide receiver that does a great job, and then the next week it'll be like, I don't know if he's playing.
Yeah.
Not sure. And that's the one thing that we always, like, it'll be up to like, 11:15 in the morning. Him and I have been talking since like 7 about, okay, well, who we're going to use. Is our New England guy going to be in there? Because Belichick, that's one of his tricks that he likes to do, but it makes him a heck of a coach. Here's another one that and you taught me this, Cincinnati. Horrible in the playoffs. Horrible. But they score points. And that's the one thing, Dad, when I think there was, 2 years ago, you're like, I'm having a wide receiver, and I think we took their quarterback, and I was like, they're horrible.
And
he goes, no, we're playing week to week.
A lot of these fantasy guys are recommending Andy Dalton for having a breakout year this year. He's their quarterback. He's always had good numbers. But in some games they look terrific. They score a lot of points, and then they'll turn around and play some team like Cleveland that's not really very good, and they'll just fall flat.
Yeah.
So
they'll lose like 17-9 or something.
Yeah.
All right. The last one, and then I've got 2 follow-ups. The last one is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
I would have thought. But they've got Jameis, a guy that can throw the ball, a guy that can run the ball. He can score touchdowns, whether running or throwing. And they've built a really great offense around him. They're not quite there yet, but they've been doing a great job, and last season was really good for them.
Yeah, they have. You take
I've got Deshaun Jackson.
Deshaun Jackson, which was a big pickup to go with Mike Evans, who was already a top 5 receiver probably.
Yeah.
They've got 2 very good tight ends. Guy by the name of Brate, B-R-A-T-E. I actually used him a lot last year, Cameron Brate. They brought in O.J. Howard from Alabama. Their running back situation is a little up in the air because Doug Martin, their top running back, is suspended for the first 3 games, but he's looked very good in preseason.
Yeah.
So there's, how many have I just named? That's 4 or 5 already. So, yeah.
So here are the 2 teams that I literally thought would be on my list. Oakland and Pittsburgh. They're near the bottom of the list.
Okay.
I thought Oakland would be
these fantasy experts,
the experts.
pardon me, are recommending Andy Dalton this year, or that he'll have a breakout season. By the same token, they're saying one of the biggest flops this year is going to be Ben Roethlisberger, the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Roethlisberger's record the last couple of years for road games, not home games. Home games, you can plug him in and you're money. On the road, he's horrible. Horrible. And so he's one of them this year that I have in my possession a boom or bust list from ESPN.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Yeah, boom or bust list.
And Roethlisberger
that's the thing with Roethlisberger, that I like him. He got himself in shape. He looked pretty good, and
use him when he's home. If you got him, use him for home games, because he is money. He's liable to pass for 500 yards, and he's loaded with weapons.
Yeah.
He's got Antonio Brown. Le'Veon Bell is pretty much universally considered the top.
And they will beat the heck out of him, and he'll still
running back.
Throw the ball.
They're just loaded. Martavius Bryant is back this year. They're just,
So what do you think about Oakland? I thought Oakland would be like, take everybody off Oakland, because again, here's a team that hasn't been good
they
for
downplayed
15
them
years.
last year, and I want to tell you, I took their
How many points did we make?
Yeah, they're money. I don't care.
So it's like it was three guys, and one of them wasn't even their quarterback.
Yeah. San Diego always scores a lot of points. They can't win games to save their lives.
That's another team, much like Cincinnati. Cincinnati. I was like, well, they don't do anything in the playoffs. Doesn't matter.
San Diego doesn't even get to the playoffs, but I'll tell you what, they can score a lot of points, and they do.
So who are the guys that you're looking at? I see you have a nice.
Well,
list.
I was looking on NFL.com today, and Michael Fabiano put out a list last couple of days about fantasy breakouts. Okay. The very first one is, the funny thing about his list is that a lot of the people on it were injured last year, which is always to me a red flag.
Yeah.
The very first one is Leonard Fournette, the running back from LSU, who's now with Jacksonville. He had injury problems at LSU, big injury problems.
Yeah, the whole time.
And
was it foot, ankle?
Pardon? Yeah, I don't
something
know.
Like that.
Something with him. Has him listed as number one breakout. Second is Crowell, the running back from Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Then one that I like a lot, Joe Mixon, who's the new running back for Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Now, he's from Oklahoma. He's had a lot of off-field problems.
We lived in Oklahoma.
Okay.
What does off-field problems mean?
Slapping girlfriends.
No.
That would be off-field problems. Yeah, no, he's had some domestic issues already as a young kid. They recommend Dalvin Cook, the Florida State running back, who is
Dalvin
with the Minnesota Vikings, and they expect him to take over as their number one running back. And the good thing about Dalvin is he not only is a terrific runner, but he also is a terrific receiver.
Great hands.
And
he once gave me a massage. Great hands.
Yeah. So that's just some of them. They have lists. You can go on any of these sites that are freebie sites. You don't really.
What are some of these? You've got 15 written down. Who's the guy in this that you'd be like, do it? Do it.
Nobody.
Really?
The one guy I like and
Marcus Mariota.
Is Marcus Mariota. He did break his leg last year. He's obviously a quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. I I have him on a couple teams this year. That's how much I like him.
I actually read today, and people were telling that on the websites, he's one of like the, what were you saying, sinkers? He's one of the guys that's either going to come up or just he's going to be done.
Yeah, and it'll have to do with the team, not to do with him.
Yeah.
He's very, very good. He was having a terrific season last year when he broke his leg. He doesn't necessarily have an injury history, so I don't think that's going to be a problem. But that's what we're looking about. Matavius Bryant, who's a wide receiver, exceptionally good wide receiver for Pittsburgh, is back this year. He missed the entire season last year. So those are just a few of them they had.
So if you were, and you can't take Tom Brady, we're going to take Brady out of the equation. Because more than likely, Brady's going to be gone.
I've had
Yeah,
him almost every year. I don't happen to have him this year.
I'm working on a question. I'm going to take him out of the equation.
Sure.
If you couldn't have Tom Brady as a quarterback, who would you take?
Aaron Rodgers.
Really?
Absolutely.
That's not who I thought you would say.
Absolutely.
We've had him a couple of times.
Yeah.
Do you think he's now injury prone?
Not any more than any quarterback.
Okay.
I don't think. It's Drew Brees at New Orleans is a very good quarterback for fantasy.
Mm-hmm. But remember, he doesn't do good against. There's a few teams that
everybody.
It's like his kryptonite.
Yeah, he has his problems. I wouldn't touch Cam Newton in fantasy.
I read that today.
He's had a lot of injury problems, and
one of the top fantasy guys in the world said, "Keep an eye on Cam Newton."
I'll keep an eye on him.
Oh, yeah. I'm just not drafting him.
It'll be because I don't want him on my team.
Yeah.
But nothing against him. I mean,
no, he's a strong player, but he's not somebody I want on my fantasy team.
No. So
I don't see that situation getting any better in Carolina.
No, I think they had to run last year, and they're probably going to tail off. The same thing may happen. That may happen. That's one reason I think that Atlanta hasn't been hyped up this year, is because much like my Chicago Cubs, Rick and my both Chicago Cubs, who seem to have had an almost season-long hangover from last year's World Series
winning
run.
it all.
The Atlanta Falcons, they're saying, may indeed have the same problem.
And it's a real thing. Look it up.
Yeah.
It might not say it, but go do the research.
Yeah, and repeating is in these sports is very, very difficult.
These days, what, the last 20
it's
years?
Almost impossible.
You can't really do it.
It happens once in a while. Pittsburgh Penguins just did it in hockey, but that's an exception. It hadn't been done for years before that. So you just can't. You just have to look at that as part of what's going on and watch them as a season starts. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know. That's why they play the game.
That's why we do it. So is there anything that you want to leave off with? I think I've got all my notes down.
Well,
I'll set a little bit of everything.
I had they did on ESPN. They did a fantasy draft, and
see mine in round one. They said
you probably have the same thing.
They said David Johnson.
Yeah.
From Arizona.
Yeah.
And then Le'Veon Bell from Pittsburgh, which kind of made sense to me.
Yeah, for the second season in a row.
Yeah.
David Johnson is terrific.
Another guy we were talking about in Atlanta, Julio Jones, seems to always we got beat so many times by the guy that had Julio Jones on his team last year. It was absolutely insane.
People seem to think Julio Jones is going to have a drop off this year for some reason. I don't know why, but David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell are, I think, far and away the top two.
Oh, here's another one I was looking at. I marked it. LaShawn McCoy.
LaShawn McCoy, I grabbed him again this year.
Did you?
I grabbed him about halfway through the season last year when he was at Buffalo. And he suddenly became all world. And he's not a household name yet,
no.
But But in fact, he's been around a couple of years. But he had a terrific season last year.
He'll have a Gatorade commercial before you know it.
Well, who knows?
You never know. Okay, what was the other one? Odell Beckham, which I already talked about.
The one thing you see in all of these drafts and all the experts that I understand what they're saying is when they're discussing drafting in these leagues, they're always saying take running backs and wide receivers first and don't even draft a quarterback till at least the fourth round.
Right.
Which in theory, I guess is okay. I've never quite understood why. But what happens in reality in a fantasy draft is, and it can happen as early as the first round, all of a sudden somebody, and a couple times it's been me, will grab either Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or
well, and Dad and I have talked about this. I think it was the first team, and I brought Dad in to help me out. We were doing, what do you call it, the snake?
Yeah, it's called snake draft.
I got the 12th draft.
10th and 11th.
It was like the first round I got the 10th, and then the second round I got the first.
Which is the 11th, which is the first pick of the second
I
round.
picked Tom Brady and Edelman.
Yeah.
And said, okay, if I can have a good quarterback with a good guy to catch it, I'll build the team around it.
By and large, the quarterback is going to be your biggest scorer.
Everybody at the table started to curse my name because then they started grabbing quarterbacks. And they didn't want to.
I've had it happen to me too.
I was that guy. I was okay with it.
I was sitting there minding my own business, and all of a sudden somebody starts grabbing quarterbacks, and you have to jump in. So it's something that happens. Same thing happens in a baseball fantasy draft. Everybody will be getting a couple of top hitters, and then all of a sudden somebody will grab Clayton Kershaw, and then it's on. And so you just have to go with it and have fun. It doesn't really matter one way or the other.
That's kind of what we're telling y'all to do. Just have fun with it. We're going to be here every week. We've got a couple weeks. Are we taking next week off?
I don't see why.
Well, I'm going to be out of town Tuesday, Thursday.
Are you going to be out of town?
Yeah. I'm going to be in beautiful Baltimore, Maryland.
Oh, Baltimore. You're going to scout the Ravens?
No, I'm eating crab legs and going
Well, you're going to scout the Ravens while you're there, obviously.
I'm driving cars and eating crab legs. That's pretty much what I'm doing in Maryland.
So this is a Kia trip, I think.
Yeah, I'm sitting in an owner's box for the Baltimore, what are they called?
Orioles?
Yeah, that team.
Yeah.
I'll be there for that.
They're a bit of a disappointment this year, but they have some good players.
So, are you thinking maybe the next week we'll do this?
Oh, we have to the next week. Yeah.
Okay. So 2 weeks from today, which today is.
I don't know what today is.
Today is the 23rd. We will be back with you September 7th. Wednesday, September 7th at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Because there aren't 31 days in August. There's only 30. And we will be talking to you about.
No, it can't be September 7th because that's Thursday. It's got to be September 6th.
Oh, September 6th. We're coming to you.
You stand corrected.
I don't have a calendar in front of me. I don't use one.
Yeah. Well, the first regular season game is the 7th. So
the 6th. Oh, so yes, the 6th.
So we'll be here the 6th.
September 6th.
To go over the weekend's activities and kind of review
who got cut, who got picked up. We're going to go through all that stuff, which that'll actually be a pretty.
And it'll be a lot more interesting. We're just basically practicing right now. I'll be quite honest.
We're rehearsing. You don't practice.
Well,
you don't practice to be fun.
Yeah.
You rehearse.
And hoping we get some good feedback for once the season gets started.
Yeah,
that's when you really need
once
help.
Once the season gets started, we're going to be doing week 1, week 2, week 3.
I've been doing football fantasy for 10 years, so you have a little experience. And I've got 4 teams so far this year, so I'm going to
have like 10 more.
Have a lot of it. No, I'm not.
Yes,
absolutely not.
They're going to keep giving you more teams. And like,
yeah,
all right,
sure, I'll take another.
If you need me to do it.
Yes, sir, may I have the number? Yes. So that's what's going to happen. We'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll be previewing that upcoming regular season,
Yep.
which will be starting the next night, and which should be a pretty good game. Kansas City has a pretty decent team.
Oh, Kansas City, New England sounds like it.
And New England at home is always a fun time. And so anyway, we'll see you in.
Take care. We appreciate you
2
tuning
weeks.
in. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.